It is so nice, number one, to see former NGAers doing so well when they leave NGA. I also want to say thank you to Sue Gordon for being such a wonderful leader within the intelligence community, including as my predecessor, both as the Principal Deputy DNI as well as the Deputy Director of NGA. And I hope those of you in the audience have an opportunity one day to follow in the footsteps of someone that you truly admire. It is truly, truly humbling. So thank you, Sue. Rhonda, Robert, thank you for allowing me to be here to open up this day two of the GEOINT Symposium and speak to the community gathered here. It is the first time that we're meeting in Colorado, and how awesome is that? It's home to so many innovative organizations that are expanding intelligence capabilities and advancing America's place in space. It's really been remarkable to see the incredible work that's happening here. As former DNI Clapper said when I joined DNA, Denver and ADFC is where the special sauce of integration happens. It's where many organizations, intelligence agencies, and industry partners are working side by side, expanding the aperture of the nation's GEOINT capabilities. It's always great to be back at GEOINT, and while everything happens somewhere in time and space, this really is the place to be. There's so many leaders here from government, academia, and industry that I know and admire, including our partners in the intelligence community, people from across the field of intelligence who have dedicated their professional lives to national security. However, I do want to recognize one of my ODNI colleagues, the director of the National Counterterrorism Center, Christy Abizaid, who will be speaking later today, and I do hope you go and listen to her as well. And I'd also like to give a shout out to Vice Admiral Bob Sharp, who is not only my former boss, but a mentor and a friend. If anyone asks me what I was doing during the COVID-19 pandemic, I will say that I was learning from the best how to lead during a crisis. This is his last GEOINT as the NGA director, but I know he's going to stay involved. No one cares more about ensuring the security of our nation than Admiral Sharp. So thank you, sir, for your service. So when Admiral Sharp joined the Navy over 30 years ago, the main focus of our military and intelligence organizations was the Soviet Union. It was the Cold War, and we were in competition with other great powers and their proxies, primarily the Soviets, but also a growing China. That does not mean, of course, that we weren't engaged with in other areas, such as with Iran, such as with narco-traffickers in Latin America, and instability elsewhere. But the Cold War was our focus. Today, we are increasingly in competition with powerful, authoritarian states, with the contours of the world having changed in ways that are at once familiar, yet different. Russia seeks to expand its power and influence. The idea of an independent, democratic, and free Ukraine charting its own course is anathema to authoritarians like Vladimir Putin, who himself is a product of the Cold War. What once was a rising China has now risen, more powerful than Russia economically and in other ways. It too has authoritarian ambitions to not only rule its own people with an iron fist, to borrow a phrase, and control all information, but to impose its will on others. The Chinese Communist Party seeks to eclipse not only the United States, but also prove that open, democratic, and free societies are diminishing in strength, replaced by tightly controlled, conscripted autocracies where individual freedoms and rights are subservient to the state. This is not the vision that I have, or those of those in the intelligence community. In fact, it's the exact opposite. I deeply believe that the purpose of the state and what government does should be in service to preserving and protecting the rights and freedoms of its citizens and its people. President Lincoln said that we are a nation of the people, by the people, for the people, and that such a nation, our nation, should never perish from the earth. More recently, Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, who passed away last month, she would say that America is the indispensable nation. At its foundation, the GEOINT community that is gathered here is the product of an open, free society that supports innovation and ingenuity. I see that at this conference. I see it in the advances taking place at the cutting edge of technology that those here work on day after day. I see it in the incredible capabilities that those here enable and in the collaboration taking place that allows those capabilities to be exploited and leveraged. With that, I'd like to tell you about two important concepts that are built on these ideas and will drive us toward a new era. The first is integrating the INTs. A core purpose of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence is to drive intelligence integration, and it is within the IC that government intelligence capabilities and disciplines reside, with many of those organizations having a presence here in Colorado. Therefore, it is natural that we are motivated to encourage the fusion of INTs into an even more interconnected, standardized, multi-INT environment, one that brings together capabilities from different sources and enables the application of further automation as early in the process as possible, creating a virtuous cycle of collection and discovery. Greater interconnectivity will dramatically reduce the time it takes for information to go from being sensed to being acted upon, creating an accelerated tipping and queuing process that drives more meaningful outputs. This can make the work of intelligence professionals make that work more efficient and better focused on deeper, more complex analysis. Doing this is a matter of routine, but doing it at scale is critical. We live in a hyper-connected, dangerous world where confronting the threats and overcoming them requires not just an in-time response, but a nearly real-time response, often delivered with pinpoint accuracy. Such timeliness and accuracy is not confined to the needs of the warfighter, but to other IC customers, including the President and his senior advisors. That is what they expect from the intelligence community. If we are able to give them a decision advantage that our adversaries cannot match, we must constantly improve our capabilities and use data in innovative and different ways. OD&I is dedicated to removing barriers and increasing collaboration, not just between intelligence organizations, but also within and among systems and partners of every kind. We want to do this as close to near real time as possible, to take these enormous sets of data, vast quantities of pixels, and great amounts of raw information, and commingle them, and use advanced algorithms to extract mission-critical information. Eliminating stovepipes, reducing barriers, and applying these capabilities as early as possible will make the entire information collection and extraction process better and get us closer to fully leveraging all our strengths from the beginning. These are not new concepts. Integrating intelligence has been our focus since the beginning of the OD&I. We have made a lot of progress leveraging intelligence disciplines, or INTs, but it has been mainly in leveraging them serially. We need to be able to leverage the power of the various INTs together earlier in the intelligence cycle, not only because we must do so in order to push our craft further, but also because new tools and technologies give us the ability to do so. Machine learning models are now allowing us to do this, and we must eliminate the vast majority of manual searching that is now required across systems by actively and automatically resolving entities and events based on all that is already known. A number of pilot programs are already underway within the community and testing these capabilities. One of them is called Unity. This will be an interconnecting system of software that fuses knowledge across INTs and integrates existing platforms and workflows. It will take advantage of machine learning models to improve outputs and speed up those workflows, applying artificial intelligence where possible. This will allow us to sift through enormous quantities of noise and focus on the information that we seek. The process will enhance our ability to get the insights we need to understand the plans and intentions of our adversaries. This is a task that never ends. And finding ways to innovate and improve our capabilities so we can do that better and faster never stops. This is just a small part of what we are doing in this area. As these efforts mature and as further proliferation of satellites gives us coverage approaching persistence, GEOINT will become even more ubiquitous, and it will remain in the vital center of intelligence. Other INTs feed geospatial capabilities with tips on where to look and what to observe. Conversely, geospatial capabilities inform other collection and sense-making platforms about what they should be collecting and analyzing. Together, they develop a much more complete and timely picture of what is happening. However, it is an unoptimized picture, a picture that fails to acknowledge that thinking about what collection platforms can do on their own is a fault line that must be bridged, or better yet, closed. The idea of fusing INTs in a way that continually refines outputs and gives greater focus on what's important can be applied to so many areas of national security. And it goes from topics that we've typically analyzed and explored using applications all of you are familiar with, to other areas that we're now expanding into more. Many are transnational threats, climate change, global health security, migration, transnational criminal organizations, and of course, countering the persistent and enduring threat of terrorism. GEOINT will be there guiding us, informing us, giving us insights into all the challenges we face. My second point is about lowering barriers and increasing interoperability in the IC. To achieve this and do more information sharing, both the IC and private industry must consider two parallel and related challenges. In the IC, D&I Haynes has led important discussions about increasing transparency. Finding the right balance between protecting sources and methods and enabling the benefits of sharing information with our partners and the public is tough, but also necessary. ODNI was created 17 years ago by a nation in crisis in the aftermath of the terrible tragedy that was 9/11. In looking at the inability to thwart the attack, the 9/11 Commission highlighted an urgent need to bridge fault lines within our government, between foreign and domestic intelligence, and between and within federal agencies. To combat an enemy that had proven to be sophisticated, patient, disciplined, and lethal. This would require replacing the system of need to know with the system of need to share. Critical to that effort has been developing interoperable platforms and consistent standards that allow for as much information sharing as possible. In those 17 years, many fault lines have been bridged and some have been closed. There is greater information sharing than ever before within the IC, and we are continuing to seek ways to work even better together. As part of this, though, we recognize that whether it is countering violent extremists, terrorists, or other cyber criminals, we will need to reach beyond the IC and work even more closely with state and local law enforcement. We also know that when we're looking at national security implications of climate change or health security, for example, the best minds working on these are not always in government, and we must engage regularly with experts outside government and academia and think tanks. And when it comes to protecting vital critical capabilities, such as our critical infrastructure, with 90% of it owned by private industry, we must work closely with industry. You have seen the results of the declassification of intelligence related to Russia's unjustified invasion of Ukraine. At the request of US policymakers, we declassified information first for our allies and then for the public, allowing others to better understand what our intelligence was telling us. And the commercial industry enabled that sharing and has continued to update the public as the war has raged on. All these things came to pass because of a need for increased information sharing. GEOINT played a significant role and continues to play a significant role in showing people what is really happening on the ground. We in the IC stepped outside our comfort zone and used our existing processes to clear information that could be shared on a scale not seen before. Commercial GEOINT literally gave people the opportunity to see for themselves. In the same way that we in the IC need to challenge the way we think about data collected by different ints, it is important that the private sector has a similar conversation to determine the right balance between proprietary, closely held systems, tools, and technology, and those then can be shared more openly in ways that encourage interoperability. Just as transparency and declassification are issues for us in the IC, I know that industry is finding the right balance on this, and it's going to be hard. You need to protect the costly investments you've worked hard to develop. However, there are potentially enormous national security benefits to having more open, competitive systems and in sharing capabilities more broadly. We must be able to integrate the data and services you provide into our intelligence cycle. The systems you develop for and with us must be capable of handling data and information built to standards that allow this integration. We believe that in the same way that we must question barriers to intelligence sharing, we need to be actively questioning assumptions about the barriers we put in place that prevent greater interoperability. What is necessary? Would greater interoperability create new applications and advantages to learn from differences, to gain greater insights, and to create more robust and resilient systems? Would allow for different systems, for different IC customers operating in different ints to work better together in an intelligence environment that is moving in that direction? It seems, from where I stand, that what I see is this kind of future. Not only because those who collect and analyze intelligence believe it is desirable, and not only because the technology being developed makes what was once impossible practical, but because it is what our customers expect and demand of us. We need you to help us deliver on their expectations, stay ahead of the curve, and keep America strong. The IC needs you to help us answer the questions that are constantly in front of us. Is it? Is it not? Will it or won't it? If so, when and how? That is what we do in the intelligence community, provide timely, relevant, accurate, and independent insights and analysis on matters of national security, giving the most complete answers we can to those questions. Others create policy. They decide what to do with the intelligence we provide. By bringing together capabilities that give us a more complete picture faster, you enhance our ability to do our job better, so our customers can do theirs, and keep our country safe while upholding the democratic principles in which our nation and other free societies were built. And that is why GEOINT is, and always will be, at the foundation of intelligence. Thank you.
Wow. I was going to say I'm so proud, but actually I just have so much respect. You took us on the most incredible journey in your short speech, from the brilliance of our system, to the role intelligence plays, to the advantage technology can afford, to the challenges we still have to address, to the recognition that intelligence isn't about secrecy, it's about national security, and in that case, sometimes you have to share differently than you imagined you ever would. And the GEOINT is foundational. So great arc, well done. I have questions. I'm going to use my privilege and ask you the first one. You know, there has been so much innovation that has been done by the private sector over the last decade. Can you talk a little bit, and you have a particular view of this, of the role of advanced research in academia and some of the labs and where that is going to take us and the need for that?
It's been really exciting to see what academia and industry bring forward. You know, always continue to bring forward your ideas. The money that you spend doing independent research and development is critically important to us. We provide a demand signal, but you all also have great ideas that you need to bring forward that we aren't even thinking about, so keep doing that. The thing that I would say, though, is don't give up on us. At times, it can be difficult to work with us. We are working on our acquisition, we're working on our procurement, we're trying to be able to move faster because we know that the situation requires it to be so. The other thing is being able to not only develop a capability and use it for the purpose for which it's developed, the way that we pivoted and are able to take those same capabilities and use them for new threats that come upon us is what's really, really inspiring about the community. And that's the thing that I don't want to make sure we lose. Be able to pivot and say that, you know what, this thing that we developed for whatever the circumstance can also be used for this other case, and being able to leverage and repurpose things so that it's not only more efficient, but you're not starting from zero when you're trying to develop new capabilities.
Yeah, I love that. Well, you have awakened the curiosity of this audience, so I'm going to try and you've got a lot of questions here, so I'm going to try and pick and choose to give a smattering of what we're interested in. This is the 2019 Worldwide Threat Assessment of the U.S. Intel Community. Said that countries like Russia and China will exploit social and political tension to create or worsen division, in other words, to create advantage for themselves. In your opinion, how can efforts to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion, particularly in the IC, help us combat these attempts by those who would do us harm?
Great question. I think if you ask any government agency, and specifically those in the IC, you know, we're always trying to hire new people. There's a lot of vacancies. There's a lot of talent that is needed to come into the community. If you look at the normal audiences that we tapped, we can continue to go to these same sources and get the same output, which means that there will always be a lot of jobs left unfilled. We need to start approaching others in this country who are willing to bring their talents to bear against these national security challenges. That's really what I see the power is, by opening the aperture of who can come into the community to bring the insights that they have, the experiences they have, coupled with those who have been here for years and years bringing their expertise. That diversity of thought, that diversity of backgrounds and approaches is what's going to be able to give us the edge. By encouraging that, we are doing something that you don't see in these societies with which we're competing, the societies that are considered our adversaries. They're a lot more homogeneous. They haven't quite figured out the power of being able to incorporate the power of others into the things that we're trying to do. If we can figure that out, we will have such an edge over those who cannot, by not only giving people opportunity, but allowing that talent to permeate the IC and allow us to fill those vacancies and get the work done, because the demand signal is not increasing, the threats are not increasing. We need all hands on deck, and that's, to me, the best way that we're going to be able to get that.
Yeah, and I think as you talk about, and Tanya, as you spoke about yesterday, you know, this is really a national security issue in general. It's just the access to training and opportunity across all marginalized sectors. So it's important for the national security community, but it is an important opportunity to create nationally in order to afford that. Let's see, we've seen D&I Haynes dedicate a lot of attention to the national security implications of climate change. Can you talk at all about the role you play as PDD&I?
Oh.
Right, because you're kind of the operational leader on climate change. And how do you think GEOINT should be better leveraged to understand the national security implications of this?
Of course. One of the fun things I get to do is really work with the deputies of the other 17 elements of the intelligence community. We come together to really have these hard conversations about how do you best apply the resources in the community to all of our threats, to include, of course, the pivot to China, but increasingly to be able to deal with these transnational threats, which typically haven't had as many resources applied to them. So discussing that as a community and figure out which ends are best suited to help with those security implications. GEOINT, I think, has already proven itself to be a great capability an int against climate change. I mean, whether you go back the years where we were able to declassify a lot of imagery of the Arctic that was taken years ago from capabilities and show that so that we can monitor the melting of the ice and the opening of those maritime routes is number one. But there's so many other things that I think we're going to be able to use GEOINT capabilities for in that space. And all we need now is sort of the creativity. So while I don't have the answer to exactly which platforms are going to be best for each particular thing we're trying to answer, I have a feeling that a lot of the creativity that's out there in the community is going to be able to figure out how to use those capabilities to really help us answer those kinds of questions.
Yeah, because that's the work right now, is for the intelligence community to figure out what it can uniquely contribute to this.
Exactly.
And not just play the 5-year-old soccer game of everyone going
Thank
to
you.
it.
Yes, there are a lot of other organizations and agencies that are also looking at it. What are the implications that are going to make the future threat that we're going to have to deal with a reality? Because the water crisis is exacerbated, or whatever the case is, food insecurity is increased. We can foresee, we can also see it on a map, we can leverage our human geography to be able to understand what's happening in the world, to prepare ourselves for those future conflicts. And GEOINT will be at the center of that.
All right, this is a question that you and I both would have always gotten, and now you have the opportunity to answer it on the big stage. Driving toward true data integration, technical barriers and security barriers are well understood. How do we address the traditional int lanes? And for example, perception that GEOINT becomes all source analysis when we incorporate non-traditional data. For example, I can imagine, just on the commercial front, there is a lot of commercially available data that when combined with GEOINT could provide incredible locational information.
Correct.
But there would be some who would say, yeah, but is that your craft? So how do you continue to provide the craft even when you're integrating lots of data sources?
It's even more important to make sure that you're applying your craft when you're integrating these sources, which, someone have said, the open source, publicly available information, commercially available information, some of those were at one point more non-traditional. They're becoming far more traditional now, and we do see great benefit in being able to leverage them. We are looking within the community how best to do that. I think that it becomes more important for the tradecraft to be applied, because having everyone in the community go after these sources in different ways, with different standards, with different ways of actually articulating where the source of that information will not serve us at all. Yeah. We need to be able to standardize those processes, which is part of what we're doing. We need to be able to standardize the kinds of training that we're offering to people who are looking at these open data sets, because it is a discipline in and of itself. So we've sort of recognized that piece of it. It doesn't really bother me that, frankly, with some of this information, we could be getting this as services from others. I think we need to figure out what the balance is, because I think there's a great opportunity to be able to leverage many in industry, many in academia who can provide us that, because that information is information that they also have access to. We could then focus a little bit more on the information that only we have access to. Somewhere bringing those two things together will be important, and figuring out what that right balance is something that we're gonna have to work on going forward. But I think there's a great opportunity to be able to leverage more from others that are out there in the future, and I hope we see that in the form of us purchasing services from many in the community.
Great answer. I really like that. Okay, last question is mine. As the former principal deputy to the current principal deputy, what's the best part of the job? What has surprised you most about the job, and what challenges you most about it?
Best part, as always, and I think this is my answer for every job I have, it's the people you get to work with. The team that we have at OD&I, the leadership team there, the individuals in the workforce, they're just wonderful folks. And it's a different kind of organization. It's a smaller organization than many of the others that I've been part of. I'm right far on the other. What was the other one? What was the other two, Sue? Best, surprising,
most surprised you, and what most challenges you?
I think the surprise was a little bit.
And the best part is the best part. So
the surprise was I started in August, as you did. And about 2 weeks later, we were in the throes of Afghanistan. So seeing how the apparatus, seeing how OD&I played in the larger role, the larger situation that was happening, the crisis that was unfolding, was very, I'll say surprising, only because I hadn't interacted with it the same way in my previous roles. Seeing the central role that we play in collaboration, in coordination with the others in the IC has been a joy to actually see. There's so much power in us coming together, and there's so many ends that bring such fantastic information to the policymakers. Being able to help coordinate that just really brings a lot of joy, frankly. So that's been really enjoyable. I don't know if there's a difficult part. I think anytime you enter—
That's a challenge.
Challenge.
Time. Just say it.
Time. The teleporter would be welcome if anyone's working on it, being able to get to places faster because there are so many things going on, and then figuring out how to prioritize among all the #1 priorities. That's the eternal challenge, and then doing that within the time that you actually have. So I would agree with you completely on that one.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, Principal Deputy Director of National Intelligence, Dr. Stacey Dixon. Thank you so much.